Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Fond du Lac Area Women's Fund virtual educational series, Project Table Talk. I'm Maria Turner, the Executive Director for the Women's Fund, and I'm joined here today by several guests. We have Business Development Manager for Aurora Healthcare, Kyle Jefferson, Fond du Lac City Police Chief, Aaron Goldstein, and founder and president of Mentori, Dr. Alan Patterson. Kyle and Aaron are both current members of the Women's Fund Board of Directors, and Alan is a former member. So today we are going to delve into the topic of what it takes to be a man on the Women's Fund Board, to be an ally to what the Women's Fund is doing in terms of gender equity. So with that, I will get started here and we'll get underway with giving our followers an idea of what it's like to sit on the board of directors that is made up of 91% women, which is not the usual norm for nonprofit boards across the country. Generally, women comprise 43% of nonprofit boards, and if the budget is higher than 25 million, which we wish our budget was approaching that at the Women's Fund, it's only 33%. So we are fortunate here at the Fond du Lac Area Women's Fund to be bucking that trend and having women in board membership leadership roles. So Alan, I know that you've served on many boards over the course of your lifetime in your career. Tell us a little bit what it was like to serve on the Women's Fund board, how that was different, and how you were able to support women leaders in that role.
Well, first of all, thank you for the question. A little bit of history. I was the first man on the Women's Fund board. And when that occurred, we were at a conference with several other women's funds throughout the state. And there was some shock through some women's fund about how were you able to do that? And I think the answer was pretty simple. It's the decision had been made. We want to get a male perspective as part of the board. You're asking about what was it like for me serving with 91% women. I think there is a difference. And I think the biggest difference that I see is that people on the board want to hear from each other. It's not always business. It's more a personal interest. It's as much a personal interest in someone's point of view. I don't think I've experienced that on other boards. I don't think there's a rush to make a judgment or a decision. It's more consensus building and hearing from everyone to see what their particular point of view is all about. I also think that my experience with the Women's Fund board is there is a more of a tendency to want to tie what activity or even steer the discussion to how does this tie to our mission and purpose? And I actually think that's pretty cool because it's easy to get off track. And that tendency, that desire to bring it back, I think is always helpful. And then the third piece is really amplification of the first. I think there's greater empathy than what I've seen. I think that comes with that genuine interest. And I think those are the defining characteristics that I've seen.
Yeah, Alan, it's interesting that you had that perspective of being the first male to serve on our board, and that experience of other women's funds saying, wow, that's unusual, that's different. I know that in sitting on a collaborative meeting that we do monthly with the other women's funds throughout Wisconsin, they are interested in the approach that we're taking here in Fond du Lac on having men be involved in decision making and allies to the work that we're doing. So it's kind of neat to be a little bit on the cutting edge of that, I think. And I also think that from the perspective of modern feminism, we need to look at bringing in as many people as we can to accomplish what we're trying to do. So to disregard the viewpoints of men would be not a good idea, in my opinion. So I was happy to see that there were already some fine gentlemen here on the board, and we continue to seek that as we move forward. So, Kyle, let's talk a little bit. This is your first year in serving on our Women's Fund board, but I think you've done a really great job in balancing both learning as a new member and a male amongst all the women, as well as leading as one. Tell us your thoughts on how men can both support women's leadership while adding value and that male perspective in solving the issues our agency is currently directing.
First off, Alan, thank you for starting off for me to be a male on the board now. I just think it's just learning. Like, how can you put yourself in a situation of a woman? And from a male's point of view, how do you carry on to make things better? I think that's where I've learned in the group so far and been in with the Women's Fund is how to how to strategically think from a aspect of, okay, these are women opinion. Here's my opinion as a male, but how do we bring both of those opinions together to form something to be able to help and bring part of a different initiative to interact with young women and young men as well. I just think it's me personally. I just like it. I think it's a beautiful thing to see some of the changes that you can make because you need to, right? As men, we need to make changes. It doesn't matter if I am in law enforcement or I am in the medical field. I think being a part of Women's Fund, it gives me the opportunity to make changes behind the door to be able to help young women or just women in general be able to guide them in the right direction.
Yeah, when I look at this panel here of the three of you, a couple of things jump to mind is one, you're all leaders in your own rights in various workplaces and what you're doing, but also look at the generational representation we have. We've got men of differing ages. Alan is going to show his gray hair, and Aaron's going to show his glasses. You wait, Kyle. You'll have a few of those things as well. But what the joking aside, what is nice about that is to see that there are men that of different ages that can support what we are doing, can see the value in bringing men and women together to look at issues that not only affect women and girls, but also have a ripple effect on men too, right? So it's really about connections and getting perspectives that are going to move our entire community forward, and not just women and girls, but also men and boys as well. I know that, Chief, you know a few things about community building, and your agency has been a huge part of the work that the Women's Fund has done with the Fond du Lac Says No More initiative. Obviously, it's an effort that's designed to fill the gap with partner agencies to provide some of that awareness building surrounding violence against women and girls in particular. And we're talking about domestic violence, sexual assault, and child abuse and neglect, but also to approach it from a preventive fashion, which the agencies here that are working in the scope are doing a phenomenal job of crisis response and intervention. We do not want to duplicate that at the Women's Fund with the Fond du Lac Says No More, but we want to be able to enhance what they are doing and to add that value of preventative work and building awareness surrounding these issues. So, Aaron, can you tell us your thoughts on men's engagement in ending violence against women and children? And what do you think it's necessary as a community to do to get more men involved and to move the conversations into actions?
Yeah, thanks. First, I want to follow Alan and Kyle in their footsteps, and I'm new to the board too. And I remember being in one of the special events that was at the Radisson, or if it was at at that time, and going, I got to be part of this. There's something somehow I got to be part of this. And Alan, at the time, you were the only male on the board, and I just knew there was something there. And as Kyle and Alan put so eloquently, as I've been part of the board, I've really learned, this is the first board I've really learned to celebrate the word and it's not or. I mean, every time you get on a committee meeting, every time you get on the board for the Women's Fund, to celebrate the unique perspectives and the different thoughts, and actually get to say and there's no divisiveness, and working towards, in this case, domestic violence, and getting more men involved, and it's just been incredible. So the other hat I get to wear, as you can see it from my uniform and badge, is not only it's kind of a cross section. I'm a male on here, I'm a white male on here, and I'm also a commander of a police department. A lot of responsibilities to be able to call myself an ally in the work that we're doing. So from me and my perspective, and as a new board member, and as a new chief, almost all coinciding at the same time, I really think that it's important that we create like a ripple effect, and it's the small things that we're doing are adding up. It's not the big things. What do I mean by that? Is finding, Kyle has said it before too, I know in a couple of board meetings, is as men, we've got to find time to coach, mentor, role model behaviors that our youth can create either a healthy relationship first with themselves as a young boy moving into adolescence, and younger a man, and then from them having a healthy relationship with a woman, and creating those ripple effects. I think we've done a better job as being part of this board to discuss early in our youth things like equity, things like respect, having those, what I would call courageous conversations. They don't just, they happen at the dinner table, they happen in the schools, they happen on committee meetings, they happen, as Kyle is probably by a school, they happen in passing with students, and finding ways to always look at a situation and talk about equity and respect. The bigger thing is, as we create those ripple effects, I think as men, we can become part of that cycle of change. So this summer, just to bring a parallel, this summer I was able to go through a book club with how to become an anti-racist. And I really draw parallels between what I learned in that book as far as racism, inclusion, diversity, and the work we're doing. So this summer I learned there's a difference between anti-racist and non-racist. And I really think as we move forward in this movement for domestic violence and violence against women, is we need to take that step from being what I would call non-racist, meaning, yeah, I might not be violent, but I'm not calling anybody out when I see it. I'm not having those hard talks, to an area where I would say it's like anti-racist, is getting to that next level and having that discussion, actually speaking out about violence, calling somebody out about violence and using it as an opportunity. So those are those ripple effects. We see it in Green Dot, we see it in, I call it like active bystander, where you're actually saying something. You're being anti-violence, and we're not there yet. I think we're creating those ripple effects to get there. I'm excited to be part of this group that is having that moment or movement going that direction.
Wow, so much good information that you shared there, Aaron. I would agree with you. I was in that same book study with you, and the things that kept crossing my mind as well were how applicable some of the learnings were in the scope of gender equity work as well. There's a lot of crossover, and certainly not to claim that where women are at today is the same as where people of color might be, but there are women, people of color, that are represented within all of those learnings too. And so to take some of that and apply it here, I think is hugely important. I love what you said about Green Dot. I agree. when we look at ways to change attitudes, it is about speaking up when we see things, and that's everyone, that's men and women, being a part of the solution, and inserting ourselves in places that maybe we're not so comfortable, but finding a way to do something in those situations. And then, the other piece, and I know all three of you do this, is to role model and bring boys into the conversation, right? I mean, I think we know this as parents, that kids are watching. They're always watching us. And if you're in any sort of position, whether that be a coach or a police chief or a business owner, there are boys that are watching you and hoping to be like you someday. So to have you all learning alongside some of the women on the board, and then taking those learnings out in the community, I think is just so beautiful. And I love that you've wanted to be a part of this. And I thank you all for taking that step. This is not a place where every man is going to be brave enough to venture, right? And so I really appreciate the fact that the three of you have come forward. I mean, I know none of you to be particularly shy, but at the same time, this is an area that, like I said, not a lot of men have been given an opportunity to even be a part of. So it's awesome to see you taking on that pioneering role here in Fond du Lac and really statewide. So with that, one of the things that we talk about when we bring people onto our board is we want to know about their passion for this cause, their passion for creating greater opportunity for women and girls, for gender equity. And so I think that a lot of times for all of us, we look to some female role models in our own lives, whether we're men or women, and they were the ones that maybe inspired us to get involved and be a part of this particular cause. So I would love to know, and we'll go one by one. We'll start with Alan. I'd love to know the woman or women that have personally inspired you to be a part of what we're doing with the Fond du Lac Area Women's Fund.
Well, this is a softball. I mean, this is just so easy. And before I knock it out of the park, I just want to say one thing about Aaron, because he and I have served together on the Boys and Girls Club board and have had an opportunity to cross paths. And I think what's unique about Aaron is that he's not a police chief who cares. He's somebody who cares that just happens to be the police chief. And that's really neat. And that's, I think, a very defining characteristic and while I don't know, Kyle, I suspect it's the same, that the caring is there. Two women opened me up to want to join the Women's Fund. One was Shelley Sadoff, and she was a founding member, and she was one of the people that had said, I think we need some men on the board, and I was put out there as a possibility. And the other, and you can take this to Freud, is my mother. It's not that I just loved my mother. I respected my mother. She worked with my dad in a retail clothing business. She ran a family. She ran the store. She ran everything. I always thought my dad was the brains and she was the brawn. And what I realized was that she was the brains and the brawn. There was nothing that she couldn't and she wouldn't do. And so it's through my mother that I learned to respect women. And Shelley had the gumption to get this thing going. So that's what got me there.
Awesome. So I knew that I would probably get teary. I'm already started. So Kyle, would you like to share with us your inspiration?
Man. So mine will be it's a collective group. It'll be my mother, both of my sisters, um, and the reason I picked them is because I know when I was embarking on this opportunity to be on a women's fund, I ran it by them, and I'll never forget. My sister asked me, she goes, "Is this something you really want to do?" And I say yes, because this is me embodying you guys all in one. I said, you guys are you women are some of the toughest women I ever met. My mom she is my absolute rock. I mean, I've watched her struggle. I watched her do things that she shouldn't be doing and watch her continue to fight every day to be bigger, badder, to be more of a role model to me and be a role model to our family. Um, Without her, it wouldn't be, I don't think it'll be any me without her. She is the reason for a lot. And before I say that, there's one other person I did forget, and she's longer with us, my grandmother. She was the absolutely queen of our family. She's always will be the queen. She's embodied everything that I stand for today. Um, the conversations that we had, even with her not being here today, still go on. Um, and those women are strong. And I want to be strong. I be a strong man for stronger women in the community of Fond du Lac, as well as in my household, as well as wherever else I go. Anywhere I walk, I should be a walking role model for young men and young women to understand that we are in this together to make things better.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kyle. And Aaron, would you share with us who you are inspired by?
First, thanks, Alan. I'd like to say, I feel blessed I get to do this every day, and policing for me is a vehicle to be able to be part of the Women's Fund Boys and Girls Club, and it's been truly a blessing. Same here, from grandmother to my mother. Actually, just at my oath of office about 2 weeks ago, one of the things I said is my mother taught me how to see the beauty in everyone, and just a strong. I'm blessed to be able to say I still have two parents that call my phone. They always say one. And my parents are getting older, so I don't want to leave out my daughter and wife, but I want to push forward to something a little different. I'm driven a lot by, I would say, survivors, and I think it comes from my near 24 years in law enforcement. So by being able to see the beauty in everyone, I know that when I look at a survivor, and everyone has their own story, their narrative, and they're coming from a different place. And there's too many times where, it's so easy to say, why didn't you get out? Or, when it happens once, it's not that easy. And when you truly sit down at either Light Up the Night, or you listen to, some poems, and you listen to those survivors, I am driven by the fact that people are able to survive, and we'll do everything we can. As it's our leading violent crime in our assaults is violence in the home, and being part of this in learning from women that have come before me, and actually hearing from Alan and Kyle of how they've learned, it just inspires you every day to do more for to break down so that we can get rid of this violence in the home.
Oh, awesome. Thank you so much for bringing that perspective into the conversation, because I think that, as women, we're inspired by some of the very same things. It happens to be my mom's birthday today, so that's kind of cool that we're having this conversation, and all of you called out your mothers as being strong. I would concur with that as well. Same survivors. I had the privilege of working in a domestic violence shelter for 7 years at the start of my nonprofit leg of my career, and I learned a lot. I saw a lot, and it fuels me to bring together people like the three of you, people like every single one of the women that are serving on our board, to be the voices for those individuals, to have their backs, because these are women and children that may not have ever had anybody speaking or seeing them where they're at. So I am so thankful to have men like you to have women that are serving on our board to do this work. So thank you for coming together today and sharing your perspectives on what it takes to be a man who is committed to doing this work alongside women. I'm so appreciative for the three of you. And, that ends this edition of this particular Project Table Talk conversation. I'd love to be able to talk longer with each of you. And I would encourage any of our listeners today to reach out to any of these gentlemen to have conversations one-on-one, because I know they're all open to having those conversations and would welcome other men helping alongside and in doing this work. So with that, I will bid us all a fair adieu, and we will look forward to our next Project Table Talk that will occur on Wednesday, November 24th. We're shifting the date because it's Thanksgiving. And we'll discuss with members of the Fond du Lac Historical Society about the history of Indigenous people in Fond du Lac County and how we can honor their contributions as we celebrate November as Native American Heritage Month. So it's another great topic related to our mission of facilitating bold change for women and girls in the Fond du Lac area. Thank you.